Hey, hey friends. Yeah, I just realized I still need to go through your ideas about the, different tier video ideas for me to do. I will still do that for sure. But I just had this idea, so I'm gonna rank the most and least dominant signs. There's definitely gonna be some sexual undertones here. I'm not referring to just sexually though. I do think it's more than that. I'm ranking the most and least dominant personalities in general, like in life. But part of that is, sexual for sure. So hopefully this will be a fun video. As always, if you are interested in getting a reading, I'm still doing those. So please, visit my website. Don't forget to email me your birth information as well when you request a reading. But yeah, I've been getting a lot of reading requests lately, which is really great. It helps support the channel. It's a lot of fun. It's a great value for the money. So if you're interested in that, definitely check it out. Anyway, so yeah, let's get to it here. So let's start out with Aquarius. So Aquarius is definitely going to be one of the more dominant signs. I don't think they're the most dominant though. Aquarius is surprisingly definitely one of the more sexual signs, despite being an air sign. I think air signs in general are not as sexual, and also for that matter, they're not as dominant too. Air signs could be more passive, and I think that's the key reason why Aquarius isn't in the most dominant category here, because Aquarius can be very passive, but on the other hand, Aquarius can also be very strong-willed. I want to do things my way, so there's definitely a lot of dominance there. It kind of just depends on how you look at it. Quick side note too, I was debating whether to put alpha on the bottom or the top. I feel like red is a more alpha color and blue is more subservient, but alpha should be on the top, I guess. I don't know. Okay, next is Aries. So Aries is going to be about as alpha as you get, fire, cardinal fire. Aries is very individualistic, very assertive. Of course, there are exceptions. There are some very introverted Aries, but even those introverted Aries are very self-focused. They're doing what they want to do, and generally speaking, Aries is usually more outgoing energy. They're usually exerting, their will on their surroundings. They've got the ideas, they've got the energy. They can be very forceful, very aggressive, even belligerent. It's just very straightforward. I think with most rankings and categorizations, Aries is usually pretty simple to, figure out. And this is definitely no exception. Aries is about as alpha as it gets. Let's contrast that from Cancer, which is, I would say, about as subservient or not as dominant. Cancer is much more passive in nature. Cancer is also very emotional. Cancer is probably the most feminine sign, very receptive, very nurturing. This is like the mother sign. So even males with a lot of Cancer energy will usually be a little bit more, introspective and inward focused. Cancer is a leader. They are cardinal. They're cardinal water, but they lead through emotion. And I do think, of course, men can be very emotional. There is emotionality in the masculine. But at the same time, when it comes to being so nurturing and receptive and empathetic, you guys in the polls, you always say how nurturing Cancer is, and at least traditionally, the feminine energy is the more nurturing energy, I would think. Hopefully we can all at least agree on that, I guess. But yeah, I have noticed that I think people with major Cancer placements do tend to be very, like I said, this isn't just talking about sexuality here, but that is part of it. I do think Cancers can have kind of healthy appetites there, but they do tend to be more submissive or subservient. Not all the time, but I would say that's mostly the case for sure. Next is Capricorn. So Capricorn's going to be much more dominant for sure. I would say probably about as dominant as it gets. Capricorn wants to be in charge. It's that simple. They want to be the CEO, the king, the queen, the emperor, empress. They want to be in charge. It's just that simple. I was actually just talking in my Capricorn compatibility video about the difference between Capricorn and Virgo, because Capricorn and Virgo are both so hardworking, but the difference is Capricorn's working for themselves, or maybe for society or the group in a more kind of abstract way, I guess you could argue, running a whole business, maybe. I wouldn't say serving the business, though. Capricorn is managing the business. That's a much better word for it. You know what I mean? Compared to Virgo, which is much more submissive. We'll talk about that later. But yeah, Capricorn, yeah, very independent. They can be controlling or very dominant, I would say, for sure. Next is Gemini. So Gemini is kind of all over the place as usual. I would say they're kind of just average. Gemini is one of the least emotional signs, very detached. So they're not really looking to generally dominate or submit on a large level, either way. But on the other hand, Gemini being so kind of nimble and flexible, they can go pretty far in either direction. I guess if I had to choose one side, I would say Gemini would be slightly on the more maybe submissive side. But they can be kind of all over the place. They're going to want to try, different modalities, I guess you could say. Maybe I would actually push this farther down a little bit. Gemini is usually like very receptive, I guess you could say. They're very easygoing, so they're going to look to others, to know kind of what to do and where to go. So yeah, I guess you could say maybe more on the submissive side, but there's definitely a range there for sure. Next is Leo. Leo's very dominant, very straightforward. They also want to be in charge. They want to go with their idea. It's very simple, I think. Leo's very confident. Yeah, there's not much else to say really. Next is Libra, which I'm going to put all the way at the bottom. Libra is the opposite. Libra is so receptive. They're so focused on what other people want. so definitely not dominant at all. Very, submissive. Libra's also like very sensitive and very, aware of kind of nuance and things like that. So, yeah, definitely one of the least dominating signs. Pisces is also going to be one of the least dominating. Why is this harder for me to rank though? I guess, yeah, I would put it on the bottom. I guess Pisces could be dominant just because of their range. Like they can be all things in a way, right? So maybe they could be more dominant, but generally speaking, they're so receptive. I think all the signs that are more like multifaceted in nature are going to be less dominant because they are go with the flow. Like they can go with any idea or, they can do anything. They're more passive, if that makes sense. They can kind of, they're chameleons. So yeah, Pisces would definitely be toward the bottom, more submissive. Next is Sagittarius. This one's more confusing though because Sagittarius is multifaceted, but they're also fire, so the multifaceted, the mutable signs tend to be less dominant, more submissive. But the fire signs are, that's about as dominant as it gets. So I think with this, I would say, dominant, but not all the way dominant. Sagittarius still does want to be in charge. They still can be like impulsive and kind of self-serving, I guess. What else? They still I would say are more dominating than not, but at the same time their flexibility does make them somewhat receptive as well. They are open to some like nuance, I guess you could say, which that sounds like it's not relevant, but it really is. Next is Scorpio. So Scorpio, I actually thought about before even doing this. I would say they would be average because they can go so far in either direction. Scorpio can be very dominating. They can also be very submissive. It really just kind of depends. I think they kind of want it all. But on the other hand, depending on the individual and the placements involved, they might lean toward one side or the other. Usually with Scorpio, it's all or nothing though. So they might, when they're dominating, they're dominating. When they're submissive, if that makes sense. There's no in between. However, because they are at both extremes in this ranking, that does put them in between. Does that make sense? So it's a little bit contradictory, but really, as usual, as with other categorizations as well, Scorpio is really all the way at the top and all the way at the bottom at the same time. So, I mean, I guess I could duplicate it and put them at the top and the bottom, but hopefully you understand. Okay, and lastly are Taurus and Virgo. Taurus is kind of more difficult. I think they would be more, I would say dominant. Not all the way dominant, but definitely more on the dominating side because they are so, again, you'll notice all the signs at the top are more kind of simplistic, more straightforward, black and white. The signs at the bottom are more open to nuance, and that's not a coincidence. So Taurus is, definitely a leader sign. They can be very authoritative, but they can also be a little bit passive as well. So that's why they're not in the top rank. Yeah, that's about as much as I can say about that. And then lastly would be Virgo. I think Virgo would be on the very bottom. Virgo is so, I know Virgo can come across as controlling and, even rigid at times. However, Virgo, their whole thing is about serving others, which, yeah, I know that might sound weird to some people, but that really is very true. I mean, if you've actually known any people with major placements like Sun or Virgo or Sun or Moon in Virgo, most of them are just so nice. They're eager to help. They're eager to please. Um, I really think, Virgo is also a sign that's open to nuance, and I think they can come across as cold, but they really do want to, what's the word? They want to fit in. They want to conform, to the expectations of other people. They really do. That's my opinion. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this ranking. Hopefully that was kind of fun. I know it was a little bit short, but yeah. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know if you agree or disagree. I'm definitely open to hearing different opinions and interpretations. But thanks so much for watching, and have a great day.